Welcome back. It seems you've once again heeded the call of the unknown. The whispers this time lead us to a tale that chills the very marrow, a journey into the heart of darkness. We delve today into the enigma of Khooni Devi.
Khooni Devi. A name that echoes through the ages, whispered in hushed tones across India.
A specter haunting the collective memory of a nation. We're venturing back to the early 20th century, to a time when India writhed under the weight of British colonialism.
A time of great upheaval, right? But beneath the surface of political turmoil, a more insidious terror was brewing.
Sources paint a vivid picture of this era.
They do. Historian Source A, for instance, describes it as a cauldron of anxieties, simmering resentment against the British Raj mingling with age-old superstitions that held sway over rural communities.
It was in this crucible of unrest and fear that the legend of Khooni Devi was forged.
Forged indeed. Her story, a tapestry of brutal murders and baffling mysteries, continues to fascinate and frighten even today.
What we glean from sources like Source B, a compilation of contemporary newspaper accounts, is that the killings began in the shadows, preying on the most vulnerable.
Each victim bearing the mark of a calculated brutality, a signature that sent shivers down the spines of investigators and civilians alike.
Let's unravel this chilling narrative, shall we? We'll delve into the historical context, the chilling details of the crimes, and the societal response that shaped the legend of Khooni Devi.
To truly grasp the terror that Khooni Devi inspired, we must first immerse ourselves in the socio-political climate of early 20th century India. It was a time of profound transformation, with the forces of modernity clashing against the weight of tradition.
From Source C, a first-hand account of life in a rural village during that period, we get a sense of the deep-seated anxieties that permeated daily existence.
Imagine, the author writes, every shadow seemed to hold the potential for danger. Whispers of vengeful spirits and malevolent entities filled the air, as if the land itself was pregnant with a nameless dread.
This pervasive sense of vulnerability, coupled with the very real threat of colonial oppression, created a fertile ground for fear to take root.
And into this fertile ground, the seeds of the Khooni Devi legend were sown. The first murder, as documented in police records, Source D, serves as a chilling prelude to the reign of terror that would grip the nation. The victim, a young woman from a remote village, was found brutally slain.
Her body bearing wounds that spoke of a calculated savagery.
This was no ordinary crime.
The brutality, the precision, the almost ritualistic nature of the killing, it pointed to something far more sinister than mere human malice.
Source E. Forensic analysis of the early Khooni Devi murders suggests the killer possessed a disturbing level of anatomical knowledge. The wounds inflicted were precise, targeting vital organs with a chilling efficiency.
You're saying this wasn't just about inflicting pain.
No.
It was about silencing victims quickly, expertly.
Precisely. And with each subsequent murder, the signature became more pronounced, more terrifying. The press, as you can imagine, seized upon these details, their accounts fueling the growing public hysteria.
Source B contains a particularly lurid headline from that era. Khooni Devi, demoness or dexterous doctor.
Sensationalized.
The media clearly played a role in shaping the narrative, blurring the lines between reality and myth.
Indeed. The press perhaps unintentionally amplified the public's anxieties, feeding the burgeoning legend of Khooni Devi.
It's as if the very act of naming this shadowy figure, of giving her a moniker that dripped with fear and fascination, somehow brought her to life in the public imagination.
But let's move beyond the headlines and delve into the investigative challenges that this case presented. Remember, this was an era long before the advent of modern forensic techniques. Investigators relied heavily on eyewitness accounts, often unreliable, and rudimentary forensic analysis.
Source D sheds light on the frustrations faced by the police.
I can imagine.
One detective's notes lament the lack of scientific methods to identify the killer, stating that we are left chasing shadows and rumors.
The absence of a clear motive further confounded the investigation. Robbery, revenge. These usual drivers of violent crime seemed to be absent in the Khooni Devi case.
So it was as if
the killings were driven by some unknown, perhaps unknowable force.
this void, this lack of rational explanation, naturally fueled the flames of speculation and superstition. People sought answers in the familiar, in the age-old tales of vengeful spirits and demonic entities that had long haunted the Indian psyche.
And the more elusive the killer remained, the more potent the legend of Khooni Devi became. It was as if she thrived in the shadows, her power growing with each unanswered question, each unsolved murder.
From Source F, a collection of folklore and oral histories, we get a sense of how the Khooni Devi legend seeped into the very fabric of rural life.
People were terrified.
Villagers began to whisper of curses, of ancient grudges, of a supernatural force demanding blood sacrifice.
Fear, it seems, became a contagion, spreading from village to village, infecting the minds of even the most rational individuals.
The investigators, despite their best efforts, seemed powerless to stop the bloodshed. Each new victim brought a fresh wave of panic, a deepening sense of dread that the authorities were losing control.
Source D hints at the growing pressure on the police force. There are mentions of internal disagreements, accusations of incompetence, and even whispers of a cover-up to quell the mounting public unrest.
The very foundations of order seemed to be crumbling, replaced by a pervasive sense of fear and uncertainty.
And within this chaos, the legend of Khooni Devi continued to grow, her shadow stretching across the land, her name whispered in terrified, hushed tones.
Let's pause here for a moment and consider the impact of this collective terror. Imagine entire communities living under a cloud of fear, their daily lives dictated by the specter of Khooni Devi.
Imagine the weight of that fear, the suspicion it bred, the way it warped relationships and shattered communities. This wasn't just about the physical threat of violence.
Wow.
It was about the psychological toll, the erosion of trust, the unraveling of the social fabric.
It's as if Khooni Devi, whether a real individual or a figment of collective imagination, had become a force of nature.
Like a storm.
A storm that threatened to consume all in its path.
And as we delve into the final chapter of this deep dive, we'll examine the cultural legacy of the Khooni Devi killings, the way in which the story continues to haunt the Indian psyche.
We'll explore how the legend of Khooni Devi, born out of a specific time and place, transcends its historical context to speak to universal human fears, anxieties, and our enduring fascination with the darkness that lies just beyond the reach of reason. As the Khooni Devi killings continued unabated, a chilling question gripped the nation. Was this the work of a human hand, or something more sinister?
The lack of a clear motive, the seemingly impossible precision of the murders, and the media's feverish portrayal all fueled whispers of the supernatural. It's fascinating to see how these whispers manifested in tangible ways.
Oh, absolutely. Take Source G, a collection of letters and diaries from that era. You'll find accounts of people shunning specific locations believed to be cursed, families performing elaborate rituals to ward off evil, and even a surge in the popularity of amulets and charms said to offer protection from Khooni Devi.
These actions weren't just the product of a few superstitious minds. They reflect a widespread panic that permeated society.
We see in Source H, a sociological study of this period, that the Khooni Devi case became a focal point for existing societal anxieties. It exacerbated fears of the other, be it the British colonizers, those of different religious backgrounds, or even women who dare to challenge traditional roles.
This fear, this uncertainty, it created a climate of suspicion where anyone could be the next victim, or worse, accused of being Khooni Devi themselves.
And within this climate, the investigation itself became fraught with challenges. Imagine the pressure on the investigators.
Oh, I can only imagine. Source D reveals that the police faced increasing scrutiny, not just from the public desperate for answers, but also from the British authorities concerned about maintaining order.
One police report states that the natives are becoming increasingly agitated and urges swift action to quell the unrest before it escalates further.
This pressure, coupled with the lack of tangible leads, likely led to some questionable tactics. There are accounts of forced confessions, arbitrary arrests, and a focus on appeasing public opinion rather than pursuing legitimate leads.
It seems that in their desperation to find a culprit, the investigators may have inadvertently contributed to the spread of misinformation and fear.
And while the true identity of Khooni Devi remains shrouded in mystery, the case serves as a stark reminder of how fear can warp our perceptions, erode trust, and even undermine the very systems designed to protect us.
It raises an important question for us. How do we, in times of crisis, navigate the line between seeking answers and succumbing to fear-driven narratives?
The Khooni Devi case, while rooted in a specific historical context, offers a chillingly relevant lesson for today. We live in an age where information spreads at lightning speed, often unverified and tinged with sensationalism. How do we as critical thinkers sift through this noise to discern truth from fear-mongering?
That's a question worth pondering, isn't it? But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the cultural legacy of Khooni Devi.
Even today, over a century later, the name Khooni Devi evokes a visceral reaction in India. She's become a figure of folklore, a cautionary tale whispered to children, a symbol of the darkness that can lurk even in the most familiar corners.
Source F contains numerous examples of how the Khooni Devi story has been woven into local folklore. In some villages, she's depicted as a vengeful spirit, punishing those who stray from tradition. In others, she's a more ambiguous figure, a reminder of the unseen forces that shape our lives.
And perhaps that's the most enduring legacy of Khooni Devi, the reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved. Despite our best efforts to rationalize, to categorize, to impose order on the chaos, there will always be shadows that defy explanation.
And sometimes those shadows hold a strange allure, a fascination that draws us in, even as it chills us to the core.
Perhaps that's why we continue to revisit this story, to pore over the details, to seek answers in the whispers of the past. Because deep down we're drawn to the unknown, to the mysteries that remind us of the fragility of our understanding.
But as we delve into the darkness, we must be cautious, for the shadows hold secrets.
Yeah.
But they also hold the potential to distort our perceptions, to fuel our anxieties, to make monsters out of shadows.
The Khooni Devi case serves as a potent reminder. Fear can be a powerful tool, one that can be wielded for good or ill. It's up to us as individuals and as a society to choose how we respond to that fear, to determine whether it will paralyze us or propel us towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
So as we conclude this deep dive into the heart of the Khooni Devi enigma, we leave you with this final thought. The darkness may hold answers, but it also holds the potential to deceive. Approach with caution, with a discerning mind, and perhaps most importantly, with a light to guide your way.